Hello students, myself Pankaj Musyoni. I'm from in Pharmaceutical Drug Regulatory Affairs and Pharmaceutical Management and by profession an advocate. Today we will discuss about abbreviated new drug application and you will be able to understand the data requirement for submission to FDA for generic drug. An abbreviated new drug application contains data that when submitted to FDA's Center for Drug Evaluation and Research and Office of Generic Drugs provides for the review and ultimate approval of a generic drug product. Generic drug applications are called abbreviated because they are generally not required to include preclinical and clinical data to establish safety and effectiveness. Instead, a generic applicant must scientifically demonstrate that its product is bioequivalent, that is, performance in the same manner as the innovator drug. Once approved, an applicant may manufacture and market the generic drug product to provide a safe, effective and low-cost alternative to the American public. Kefauver-Harris Drug Amendment 1962 and Hatch-Waxman Act 1984 are two regulations that facilitated the growth of generic industry. Paper NDA were the early equivalents to today's ANDA, wherein the submission used to contain copies of published literature on safety and efficacy and bioequivalence studies comparing the generic drug to the innovator drug as the evidence of safety and efficacy. Applications under the abbreviated tag were accepted only for drugs approved prior to 1962 and which were labeled safe and effective under DESI review. Hatch-Waxman Act made an attempt to balance the commercial and competitive aspects of the generic and innovator drugs. It created provisions for marketing exclusivity, patent term extension for NDA holder, and option of suitability petition under section 505(b)(2) and 180-day generic drug exclusivity to the post-innovator applicants. NDA applicants were provided a protection period through marketing exclusivity, 5 years for NCE exclusivity, 3 years for the new clinical investigations. During this period, no other competitor was allowed to enter into the market. The provision was aimed at letting the innovator recover the investments made while developing the drug. All the NDA were required to list the relevant patents for the filed applications. Besides this, NDA drugs were also protected through patents. NDA applicants were required to identify and submit the patents with the NDA at the time of initial filing. New patents could be added to this list over the life cycle of the drug. Generic drug applications are required to prove that they are therapeutically equivalent to innovator drugs. This is accomplished by demonstrating bioequivalence, pharmaceutical equivalence, compliance with CGMP requirements, sameness of labeling with the innovator approved labeling. Generic labels could not include the exclusivity or patent protected information. Only difference allowed between the labeling of generic drug and innovator drugs were those related to manufacturers, like description of the finished products, ingredient of the formulation, NDC number of the formulation, etc. Generic drugs were also required to include certifications of the status of all patents through the reference innovator drug. Accordingly, the generic submission are categorized as paragraph 1 filing, no patent information has been previously submitted to the FDA. Paragraph 2 filing, all the submitted patents relevant to drug have expired. Paragraph 3 filing, if the applicant states that he intends to market the drug only after the expiry of the listed patents. Paragraph 4 filing, if the applicant certifies that any product or use patent is invalid or will not be infringed by the generic drug approval. In such cases, the applicant must give a notice to the innovator applicant. If the innovator thinks that generic drug approval will infringe upon his patents, that he can sue the generic applicant within 45 days of receiving the notice. Under such circumstances, an automatic stay period of up to 30 months pending resolution is applied onto the generic drug application. Generic drug application is not reviewed by the FDA during this period. FDA has issued a checklist on the content of ANDA filings. All the NDA are required to comply with this checklist if submitted in CTD, Common Technical Document format. Review procedures of ANDA applications include: once a complete application, NDA, BLA, ANDA is filed with FDA for review, it is sent to the concerned center for review. FDA charges an application fee for reviewing NDA and BLAs. The application fee charged as per the projected financial budget and number of applications to be filed with the FDA. After receiving the application for review, the center designates a project manager who is responsible for coordinating the review. Project manager is the primary point of contact for the applicant for any type of communication. There are typical phases of the review cycle, which include: application is checked in the document control center, application is checked for completeness of content and technical details, and this helps the center to determine whether a worthwhile review is possible. The time limit is within 60 days of receiving this application. If application is found to be complete, an acceptance to file letter is sent to the applicant. If application is found incomplete, a refuse to file is sent to the applicant. If an refuse to file is received, the applicant is required to provide all the required information, and FDA will initiate the review only after receiving the complete documents. Different sections of the application are distributed to the review team. Applications are taken up for review based on the priority procedure and labeled standard and priority category. Review based on the type of application. 8 drug application are high priority application, and during the review cycle a 90-day meeting can be held between the applicant and FDA to discuss the progress and issue. Another action is issuance of action letter, which is issued by FDA project manager to the applicant within 180 days of acceptance to file letter, and this letter is issued after technical evaluation of different section of the application, which is completed by respective officers. If the application is completely acceptable, an approval letter is issued, and if there are some problems, not approvable letter is issued, which means that application is not approvable, or an approvable letter is issued if application can be approved after addressing the deficiencies. Coming on the ANDA review procedure, the review procedure is same for ANDAs, but there are some additional issues which should be keep in mind. Review cycle might not be strictly followed as it is done in the case of NDAs. A 45 days gap between acceptance to file letter and initiation of review will be there in case of para 4 filings. There is a strict timeline that the applicant has to follow in order to respond to different deficiencies raised during the course of review. Telephonic amendments, FDA may ask for some additional clarifications, data to support efficient review of application, and response has to be submitted within 10 working days. Similarly, in case of minor amendments, response has to be submitted within 60 working days of receiving the deficiency letter, and in case of major amendments, response has to be submitted within 180 working days of receiving the deficiency letter. Review of application is stopped when the applicant is responding to minor or major deficiencies, and if the applicant does not respond to minor deficiencies within 60 days, category is changed to major amendment, and review is not stopped in case of telephonically amendment. The next process is filing formats and contents, which is developed and accepted by the FDA for filing application with FDA. Regulatory authorities from USA, EU and Japan came together due to pressure from the pharmaceutical manufacturers and to supply the latest treatments to their respective population, and developed a common format for filing drug approval applications in these 3 regions. The common body is known as ICH, International Conference on Harmonization of Technical Requirements for Registration of Pharmaceutical for Human Use, and the format for filing application as CTD. This is to be noticed that the format is called Common Technical Document because harmonization has been achieved only for the format of the technical part of the filing, and format of administrative section of these 3 regions are still different and are to be prepared as per the regional requirements. Few parts of the technical section as required by regulatory authorities are still different from the CTD format, and the guidances issued by the regulatory authorities clarify when these are needed and where in the CTD format they should be placed. The ICH is a joint initiative involving both regulators and research-based industry, representatives of the European Union, Japan and United States in scientific and technical discussion of the testing procedures required to access and ensure the safety, quality and efficacy of medicines. It is also important for applicant to understand that the CTD format provides guidance on the organization of documents in the submission. The content of the CTD is determined by the regulations and discussions with regional regulatory authorities. Coming to the CTD, which divides the drug application into various modules. Module 1, which is administrative and prescribing information, wherein no common format has been finalized. Module 2, which includes summaries, and the section includes quality overall summary, which provides reviews and overview of the data incorporated in Module 3. Non-clinical overview. The non-clinical overview should provide an interpretation of the data, the clinical relevance of the finding, cross-linked to the quality aspect of the pharmaceutical and the implications of the non-clinical findings for the safe use of the pharmaceutical. Next, non-clinical written and tabulated summaries. The non-clinical written and tabulated summaries should provide a comprehensive factual synopsis of the non-clinical data, clinical overview, which should provide a clear discussion and interpretation of the clinical findings that support the application, together with any relevant information such as pertinent animal data or product quality issues that may have clinical implications. Clinical summary. The clinical summary should provide a detailed factual summarization of the clinical information in the application. Module 3, which is quality module, which contains the detailed technical information regarding CMC information and contains a TOC for paper submission only. For module 3 only, detailed information regarding the drug substance and drug product. Coming to the module 4, which is non-clinical study format, which contains a table of content for module 4 only, non-clinical study reports contained in the application and literature reference. Then module 5, which relates to clinical study reports, contain a table of content for module 5 only and a tabular listing of all clinical studies, clinical study reports and literature reference. Requirements for preparing module 1 can be found at the official website of regulatory authorities of respective regions. Then coming to the electronic submission, wherein paper submission is the traditional way in which the application are submitted to the authorities across the world, but over a period of time and with the evolution of information technology, regulatory authorities have realized that it will be a far more convenient and efficient to review the application if the application are received in electronic format. Submission of data in PDF, electronic submission could be in electronic CTD format or non-ECTD format. In non-ECTD format, PDF documents are prepared as per the requirement. For electronic submission, requirements include those specified for PDF file size, scanning resolution, hypertext and bookmarking, file security properties, pagination, etc. Non-ECTD submission contains electronic documents arranged as per the CTD hierarchy. Where submissions are made in ECTD format, they are prepared using a particular software format called XML. This allows for easy navigation and review of the submission and also provide for the information submission throughout the life cycle of product. Most of the regulatory agencies in the regulated world are working towards making in the mandatory format for electronic submissions. Coming to the certification of drug, insulin and antibiotics are the two classes of drugs requiring certification. Although certain antibiotics may be exempt from certification, the FDA, acting under the mandate of the Act, has adopted regulations to ensure that each batch has the characteristics of identify, strength, quality and purity prescribed in such regulation. Application for certification must be made to the Commissioner. For insulin, the information that must be contained in a request for certification is set forth in 21 CFR section 164.2. In 1982, the FDA published a regulation that exempts virtually all antibiotics from the requirement of obtaining batch certification. For 20 years, companies marketing approved antibiotics had been required to submit assay results and samples of each manufacturing batch for FDA testing and evaluation. The purpose of this exercise was to assure batch-to-batch integrity and uniformity, and this testing was paid for the companies involved and was both costly and time-consuming. And apparently finding the exercise no longer justifies, the FDA dropped it. Batch confirmation continued to be required for insulin products. Now coming to the drug efficacy study implementation review, a particularly controversial provision of 1962 amendments concerned drugs already on the market that had effective NDAs under the old law, that is during the period from 1938 to 1962. A 2-year period of grace was provided to the manufacturer to supply substantial evidence of effectiveness to support the claims on the previously cleared labeling, since the 1938 Act required proof of safety only. To cope with the overwhelming burden of such a review, FDA enlisted the services of the National Academy of Science and National Research Council for help, which set up a series of panels to which drugs were assigned on the basis of the medical discipline in which they were used, that is ophthalmic panel, dermatology panel, cardiology panel, and manufacturers of drugs affected were invited to submit data to these panel in addition to the data already contained in their NDAs. Upon evaluation of these data, the panels rate the drug on effectiveness for their labeled indications with effective, effective but, possibly effective, probably effective, and ineffective. The panels work independently, and frequently a drug would be judged effectively for one of its uses by one of the panel and less than effective ratings through 4 for another of its uses by another panel. The extent of the problem can be seen in the fact that this panel returned 2824 reports covering approximately 3,700 drugs manufactured by 237 companies, and the panel began submitting reports on October 11, 1967, and the last report was submitted on April 15, 1969. The FDA attempted to implement these reports by publishing findings in the Federal Register, and in case of drugs that were probably or possibly effective, the drugs would be allowed to remain on the market for a period of 12 months and 6 months respectively. Judge Bryant threw upon the public inspection all of the remaining reports. He set certain timetables for implementing either a removal of less than effective classification or a withdrawal of the NDAs for allowing certain drugs to remain on the market if good reason was shown by the FDA, providing a long-term implementation, and for requiring reports to the court of the progress of the Desi Review implementation program. In its own attempt to give some notice to the practitioner that the drug they are planning to prescribe had received a rating of less than effective, the FDA required that the less than effective evaluation be called to the practitioner's attention by including a statement prominently in the labeling and surrounding it with an appropriate border. Since most package insert labeling is printed black on white, this regulation promptly became known as black box regulation, and the indication section of the package insert or on the label with an appropriate border, which is follows. Based on a review of this drug by National Academy of Sciences, National Research Council, and our information, FDA has classified the indication with a statement of the probably or possibly effective status in paragraphs form appears. Final classification of less than effective indications requires further investigations. From the beginning, enforcement of the NEC-NRC findings was not without its problem, and resolving these problems ultimately required recourse of the Supreme Court of the United States. First, there was the specter of so-called grandfather clause of the Kefauver-Harris bill, which is claimed protected certain drugs within its definition from ever having to be proven effective. Second, it was claimed that certain drugs that were identical or similar to NDA drug received by NAS-NRC were unaffected by the findings of such review because they had been marketed in imitation of such drug but had not been themselves had an NDA Me Too drugs. This claim was made in the face of the FDA's proposed notice in February and final notice in October of 1972 that DESI notices of findings were equally applicable to identical, related or similar drug products even though such products had never had an NDA. Third, there was a controversy regarding which body, the FDA or the courts, had jurisdiction to decide whether a drug was a new drug, that is it was not generally recognized as safe and effective. Finally, there was the question whether a manufacturer had an absolute right to a hearing before FDA prior to withdrawal of his NDA, or whether FDA could administratively decide that no hearing was warranted because on the face of the documents offered in the support of the drug, there was no substantial evidence of safety and or efficacy. These cases were fought vigorously through the lower courts, and the importance of their outcomes was deemed to be so great that the Supreme Court granted writ, that is, it is agreed to hear argument on the issues. They were resolved in June 1973. The first case is so-called Bentex case. In this case, a group of drug companies marketing had filed suit against the FDA, alleging that their products were generally recognized as safe and effective and therefore were not new drugs. They asked to be exempt from the regulatory results of an NAS-NRC panel report, which has found that other companies which were the subject of new drug application lack substantial evidence of efficacy. This means that the question before the court was whether a so-called Me Too drug could be subject to NEC-NRC results even if it had never held an NDA and even if it might meet the literal requirements of the grandfather clause. The Supreme Court held that such products are subject to NRC results. Thus, Me Too products must meet the standard announced by the FDA for NDA drugs. Notwithstanding any other legal arguments that the Me Too manufacturers might make, the court held that the FDA had jurisdiction to decide with administrative finality the new drug status of individual drug or classes of drug. The FDA, according to the Supreme Court, should not be required to litigate on a case-by-case basis the new drug status of each drug on the market. All of this means that henceforth FDA may say that with great finality whether a product is a new drug, and in particular can say that Me Too products are new drugs but must come off the market if the NDA drug that they are imitating is required to come off the market. The second case before the Supreme Court involved a bioflavonoid product. In this instance, a lower court had held that the court had jurisdiction to determine whether a product was protected by the grandfather clause, and the FDA did not have authority to decide this question. The lower court also had held the manufacturer's own Me Too versions of its NDA drug were subject to the NDA procedures. The Supreme Court held that the phrase any drug as used in the grandfather clause is used in a generic sense, which means that the Me Toos, whether products of the same or of different manufacturers covered by an effective NDA, are not exempt from the efficacy requirement of the 1962 amendments. Thus, the grandfather clause has been further narrowed so that it applies only to those drugs that meet the definition in the grandfather clause and are not Me Toos of other drugs that did had NDAs. The third decision involves the important question of a drug company's right to administer hearing before the FDA. This is Heinsohn, Westcott and Dunning decision. In this case, a hearing to revoke a new drug application to entitle that company to a hearing. In this decision, the Supreme Court sustained the summary judgment mechanism instituted by FDA to determine whether administrative hearings must be held. Under this mechanism, a drug company must present in its hearing request with substantial evidence that the drug is effective, and if the FDA concludes that such evidence has not been presented, no hearing is granted and the drug is removed from the market without hearing. The Supreme Court has sustained its mechanism. In this event, the FDA denies the hearing, and the Supreme Court has ruled that a court of appeals in reviewing this administrative section must determine whether the commissioner's findings accurately reflect the study in question, and if they do, whether the deficiencies he finds conclusively render this study inadequate or uncontrolled manner. Now coming to the ANDA process, wherein the bioequivalence is almost important. Bioavailability, which means the rate and extent to which the active ingredient or the therapeutic ingredient is absorbed from a drug and becomes available at the site of drug action. And a drug shall be considered to be bioequivalent to a listed drug if the rate and extent of absorption of the drug do not show a significant difference from the rate and extent of absorption of the listed drug when administered at the same molar dose of the therapeutic ingredient under similar experimental conditions in either a single dose or multiple doses, or the extent of absorption of the drug does not show a significant difference from the extent of absorption of the listed drug when administered at the same molar dose of the therapeutic ingredient under similar experimental conditions in either a single dose or multiple doses, and the difference from the listed drug in the rate of absorption of the drug is intentional, that is reflected in its proposed labeling and not essential to the attainment of effective body drug concentration on chronic use, and to be considered medically insignificant for the drug. Now coming to the bioequivalence definition by regulation 21 CFR part 320, which means drug products in identical dosage forms that contain identical amounts of the identical active drug ingredient, that is the same salt or ester of the same therapeutic moiety, or in case of modified release dosage form that require a reservoir or overages, or such forms as prefilled syringes where residual volumes may vary that deliver identical amounts of the active drug ingredient over the identical dosing period, do not necessarily contain the same inactive ingredients and meet the identical compendial or other applicable standards of identity, strength, quality and purity, including potency where applicable, content uniformity, disintegration time and or dissolution rate. Now coming to the Waxman has exclusive marketing provisions, which includes new chemical entities, which gets 5 years during which no ANDA can be approved or even submitted, except that after 4 years ANDA can be submitted if it contains a paragraph for patent certification. Then there is 3-year exclusivity, wherein changes supported by the clinical investigations under new and clinical terminology, which should be conducted or sponsored by applicant and essential for the approval. Another one is pediatric exclusivity, orphan drug exclusivity, and 180-day or generic exclusivity, which is the basic of first applicant to submit a complete ANDA containing a paragraph 4 certification, which gets 180 days during which FDA may not approve another ANDA for the same drug. Similarly, the patent term extension is covered under 35 USC 156, which is major element which compromises the Act of 1984, and this is exception to the first commercial marketing requirement, wherein the methods of manufacturing patents that claim recombinant DNA technology are the first marketing of a product under the claimed process. This eventually leads to brand generic wars, strategies and tactics, wherein the goal of brand is franchisee-like extension, wherein the generic wants early market penetration. The generic tactics include patent challenges, engineering around invalidity of claims, and use of ANDA suitability petitions, and also include the patent evergreening. Similarly, after all components of the application are found to be acceptable, an approval or tentative approval letter is issued to the applicant, and a tentative approval does not allow the applicant to market the generic drug product directly into the market. Perhaps the most important statement in the Heinsohn, Westcott and Dunning decision regards a problem other than hearing requests. It had long been accepted that a drug could be an old drug if there was sufficient expert medical opinion declaring it to be generally recognized as safe and effective. It was further thought that this opinion could be just that opinion and need not to be based on any particular type of scientific data. The Supreme Court has now severely narrowed this thinking and has ruled that a drug can be an old drug based on a consequences of expert opinion only when that expert consensus is founded upon substantial evidence as defined in section 505D. This means that a drug can be an old drug only if there is a substantial evidence of efficacy by well-controlled studies that demonstrate that the product is in fact effective. Lower federal courts have followed this discussion, and there are now remains no question as to the validity of this doctrine. The final case before the Supreme Court involved CIBA. Here a lower court had ruled that the FDA had the authority in an administrative hearing to determine whether a product was a new or old drug. CIBA had appealed this decision. The Supreme Court held in a manner consistent with the previous 3 decisions that the agency does not such jurisdiction, and that therefore when a company has had one opportunity to litigate the new drug issue before FDA, it may not later try to litigate in another forum such as a federal court. A final chapter in this controversy, the status of Me Too or generic equivalent drug, was finally decided in 1983. All through the late 50s and 60s and well into the 70s, companies continued to market their unapproved version of drug that had gone through the NDA process, relying on various legal arguments and an FDA policy of allowing such marketing, a policy that seemingly contended the NDAs were unnecessary for generic drugs. As the DSI review model on and the ANDA policy was put into the effect, however, a more definitive resolution of this problem was needed. Following a series of lawsuits involving the generic drug industry, one finally reached the Supreme Court. There the court ruled that generic version of drugs that had gone through an ANDA process, be it NDA or ANDA, also had to go through a similar procedure. The main reason for this decision was the court's reliance on the fact that changes in inactive ingredients such as colors, stabilizers, binders, or the life could affect the safety or efficacy of an active ingredient. Thus, each should be separately approved by the FDA. With that ruling, the last issue of the DSI review was resolved, so that question of whether there are any drugs that do not require FDA approval is largely academic. So accordingly, the FDA process and approval procedure for abbreviated new drug applications is now clear. Thank you so much.